I feel very weird. I'm in this weird space where I feel really happy about what the Hornets did and all of the decisions that the Hornets made over the court, like multiple decisions. Did the Hornets just win the draft? Is that happening right now? We try to dissect all of it today. Locked On Hornets. What's happening?
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
What a glorious day. I'm excited to do this podcast. It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcasts, and that includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. I think he's writing about happy stuff over there. He's talking about the NBA as well on a macro level. Locked On NBA with Matt Moore and Hayes. I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Sports Radio 92.7 FM. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time?
Game Time.
Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Speaking of the macro, let's go macro, and then let's start to dissect. Sion James out of Duke, transfer from Tulane over to Duke, played with that incredible team this last year. Sion James was the 33rd overall pick by the Hornets. Our guy. We've been clamoring for him this entire time. The Hornets got him. Ryan Kalkbrenner.
Boom!
Kalkbrenner, selected 34th overall. There were some thoughts that maybe the Hornets would move out of that 33 or 34 spot, trade one of the picks. No. We went fishing. Jake Fisher, he caught a big one and told us that the plan is to keep Ryan Kalkbrenner, and now I think it's safe to say we got both of them. Sion James, 33rd pick, Ryan Kalkbrenner out of Creighton, the 34th pick. This is after a first round where the Hornets selected Kon Knueppel at number 4, and then with the Mark Williams trade, got the 29th pick from Phoenix. They drafted Liam McNeely out of UConn, 29. Macro. I think, Doug, what they did with this draft is they showed you that they are taking the necessary steps to become a serious basketball team. They're drafting players that help the guys around them, and that's exactly what we've been asking for a very long time. Put LaMelo, put Brandon, put whoever your core is in place to figure out if they're a playoff team. To just take the necessary steps to figure out if this is indeed a playoff core, because so far you haven't been able to do it. There have been some bad luck stuff going on, like injuries, training staff. They try to switch the training staff. Okay, the last training staff wasn't good. Let's go ahead and change it out. Cool. Have a new training staff. Still injuries this year. All right, so there's some bad luck stuff, but also you can't absolve the Hornets of all of that responsibility. They've largely been responsible, especially with the old regime, for putting the players around LaMelo and around some of the other stars, I'm going to cough like this the whole time, that did not allow them to have any kind of team success. What I think you did with these 4 picks is you're trying to win with space and shooting and physicality and toughness and rim protection, and you're just checking a lot of the boxes off with 4 draft picks that help you figure that sort of thing out. And it's why we're asking questions like, did the Hornets just win the draft with everything they did over the last few days?
Well, the Hornets came into this draft with a lot of needs. They had a lot of boxes to check. And I don't think it was very realistic to expect them to check all of those boxes, and particularly like you're drafting rookies. And a lot of times you're drafting, 18 and 19-year-old kids. So to expect them to come in and immediately help, that might be unrealistic, or at least expect them to alleviate concerns on the level that you would expect that from Miles Bridges and LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. But at the same time, they looked at their roster and said, we need more shooting. Last in effective field goal percentage, bottom of the league in efficiency. The guys that were taking the most shots didn't play very efficiently, and in part because they didn't have players that they could pass to that were very efficient, so they were taking bad shots. And so they addressed that need with Kon Knueppel, with Liam McNeely. And then they said, oh yeah, also we have some rim protection issues, and we just need to shuffle and rethink our entire idea around our center position anyhow, because we tried to trade Mark Williams and that didn't work. and now starting him doesn't make any more sense. And so they figured that out and then drafted Ryan Kalkbrenner, somebody that was an elite rim protector in college, is an older player, and so is going to be able to come in with some experience and be able to hang in there as a solid backup big. And then I thought Sion James, great pick, because it reacts to what they did in the first round, which is you took two players in Kon Knueppel and McNeely that are going to deliver threes, but are probably going to have to really adjust to NBA level defense. Whereas Sion James, sort of the opposite. You're expecting him to come in and immediately be effective on defense and be a pest, and maybe some of the offensive stuff comes along later. So yeah, I think they went into this thing saying this is a strong draft. We don't want to take huge swings and miss. We want to make sure that both in this upcoming season, but also 2 and 3 seasons from now, we come away with multiple players that can be rostered on this team and help us continue our trend towards the postseason. I thought it was a great draft.
I did too. I thought it was a great one. And while we would have gone with Tre Johnson at 4 over Kon Knueppel, that was the whole scenario thing, right? What's the hierarchy of what Locked On Hornets wants to do? You and I were much aligned this entire process of what we wanted to do. VJ Edgecombe would have been the pick had he been available. He wasn't. Tre Johnson would have been our pick in the next scenario, outside of maybe trading back, right? Trying to find a nice trade back partner, collect some assets, take the best shooting guard available at 6, 7, or 8. They felt they couldn't move back far enough because they wanted to get their guy. Their guy eventually was Kon Knueppel, who we were also cool with. We liked the pick. We didn't love it, but we liked it. And the more this is the classic talking yourself into it sort of thing. I didn't have to try very hard. I think the difference between a Kon and some of these other guys, and maybe a Liam McNeely and Sion James, Ryan Kalkbrenner, all of them, I think that they unlock your other players in ways that some of the other prospects did not. So, for instance, with the spacing, the gravity that Knueppel brings, the passing, the high-level IQ, the getting into the paint and then always making the right decision, he's going to benefit everybody around him. And that's a big, big reason as to why you might select that guy over a Tre who could be explosive, could be a lot of fun at ultimately what the goal is, putting the ball in the darn cup. So Tre Johnson's very good at that. Ace Bailey could be very good at that. But Kon unlocks a special type of power for everybody around him. Liam McNeely, not the passer that Kon Knueppel is, but in the corner, definitely has the spacing with the shooting outside of what he did at UConn. Sion James, man, all he did was just hit a whole bunch of threes last year for Duke and played a ton of minutes for the best basketball team in the regular season last year. Florida ends up winning the championship, but I think Duke and Houston, oddly enough, the team that they melted down against, I think those were among the best rosters we've seen in the last decade. And all they did was rely on Sion James to be a key glue guy for them constantly, every single meaningful basketball game. And then Kalkbrenner with just the rim protection. The other thing is I think they have found a nice balance of the younger players in the first round, a couple of freshmen, and then older players. Sion James is going to be close to 23 by the time the season starts. His birthday is December 4th, so he's going to be close to 23 by the time this upcoming season starts. Ryan Kalkbrenner already 23. In fact, he's going to be about 23 and a half by the time the season starts. So now we can start to look at the competitive nature of what's going to happen with Charlotte in 2025, 2026. The rebuilding, I think you can rebuild while also remaining competitive. And while they only won 19 games last year, outside of that stretch where you lost by 40 every single game for 3 games in a row, it was rough, right? And unfortunately, that stretch stole the show in terms of how we discussed last season. But remember, we were celebrating. We were discussing a lot of the losses in a way where at least they're competitive and they're not getting run out of the building outside of that historic stretch. Now I'm hoping that we can stack a few more wins out of those competitive losses because you have some older players and you have a whole bunch of high IQ players. That makes a lot of sense with the guys that you already have on the roster. I thought it was a nice balance all around.
Not only are they older players, the 2 second rounders, and you throw Kon into this discussion as well, not an older player, but NBA ready bodies. I mean, yeah, sure, Kalkbrenner can get stronger.
Big
sure,
thing, man.
Kon Knueppel, I thought the funniest thing he said post-draft was, I'm going to squeeze every bit of athleticism out of my body, right? There's some things you can do with Kon. I think Liam McNeely stands out as the one player that I think is probably going to need a little bit more seasoning, whether it's in the G League, in the weight room. It's probably going to be a year or so before we see the full picture of what Liam McNeely could be or is or what they think he can be, okay? But everybody else, I could see these players plug in, and they're all cost-controlled players. So it starts to make you wonder, like, is there something else cooking in their idea? They're obviously paying LaMelo a lot. They're going to be paying Brandon Miller a lot in a few seasons. But if they did want to shuffle some things around in free agency, some sign and trade, bring on a big contract, when you're looking ahead 2 or 3 seasons and you see all of these players that have the ability to be rostered players on controlled contracts, like that lines up. If you were expecting the organization to put big money into veterans, that sort of lines up with how you would do that. So I think that's very interesting as well. Would have been a completely different thing had they only taken 2 players and both those players been like 3 or 4 year projects. That's a whole different approach.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm saying. Keep your eyes open. Keep your ears open.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that in the next segment. Coming up next on Locked On Hornets.
Bees everywhere!
We keep our eyes open. We keep our ears open. We talk more about free agency. Jeff Peterson actually having some comments about Tre Mann after the first round draft media availability. Pretty decisive on what they want to do with Tre. We'll talk about those comments coming up next. LOH. This episode is brought to you by Skims. Did you know that Skims now makes underwear for men, bringing the same attention to quality and comfort they're known for? Well, now you do. The men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. Finding underwear that fits well, stays in place, and moves with you throughout the day can be a challenge, but Skims solves that with lightweight, high-quality materials that provide all-day comfort, whether working out, traveling, or just going about daily life. Shop Skims Men at skims.com. Again, Skims Men's at skims.com and Skims stores. Let them know we sent you. After placing an order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Couple things you mentioned there going into the second segment. One, Liam McNeely compared to the other guys. I agree with you. If you're asking who's the most G League ready and who's the most league ready, I think Liam McNeely is the most G League ready. If there was a candidate that was the favorite to spend a decent amount of time in Greensboro as a member of the Swarm, I think Liam McNeely might be that guy, despite him being drafted a few spots ahead of Sion James and Ryan Kalkbrenner. So I agree with that. In terms of, drafting the league ready guys, I do wonder now what the rotation is going to look like. I know we have it in the third bullet point. We can get to that. But, I mean, man, if we keep going with what we've been discussing in the pre-draft process, so many NBA Finals lessons, NBA postseason lessons, what do those moves look like with a Jeff Peterson regime? What do they do, okay? Well, Sion James, that body looks a lot like the bodies that were wreaking havoc for OKC this entire time. That whole profile, right? Like that's what he looks like. He's a tank, man. And again, I can't help but go back to looking
should we just pretend that Sion is like a LeBron James progeny? Should we just pretend?
Yes, I'm here for it. I'm ready for Sion James to just play all of the minutes as soon as he suits up. Well, and I know it's not like we talked about him a lot for a couple reasons. One, it's not like you're tuning in every single day to hear a lot about second round prospects. We know what you come here for. We try to give you the goods. But two, when we do talk about the second round picks, when we give you the candy and then give you the medicine after you come in for the candy, we were just focusing on rim protection. We were focusing on a couple of other guys, but it doesn't mean that Sion isn't a good selection. The guy just played 30 minutes in meaningful basketball games for the most talented roster in all of college basketball last year. That's a thing that happened. The Duke team that had 3 top 10 picks in this year's class, including the best player since Zion, since Anthony Davis, all Sion James did was play 30 minutes of contest in the tournament. Like, that stuff matters. And it's because he knew how to shoot. He shot 40%. He shot 46% on catch and shoot opportunities last year. He shot 40% over the last 2 years on 200 3-point attempts. Like, that's a large sample size, man. So the shooting the last couple of seasons, it's just been spot on. And he's got the linebacker build. I thought the same thing. They didn't draft no softies this time around, man. That if you Dabo Swinney, the head coach of Clemson football, says to bring your own guts, BYOG. They got guys that are going to bring their own guts in practice and game day every single day, Doug.
Totally. I think they have a lot of guys now with some thick frames and some thick brains. Now, the one criticism.
I love it. We can marinate in that for a second. All right, go on. I love it. I just want to give you credit.
Thank you. But if there is one criticism of this draft, it's that they did not really draft anyone that is like an elite athlete. I mean, even Sion James has some athletic concerns. Ryan Kalkbrenner, not someone that's like has concrete feet, but is not going to be a switchable big. Kon Knueppel, we've talked about the athletic concerns. McNeely, I think it's even worse. So, that's something to look at. Now, they already have some elite athletes. I think, Miles Bridges, LaMelo Ball certainly has some elite athleticism at times. Tre Mann, I don't know. It's a gap. I think they got to address it at some point. And maybe, they're not really, I don't know that they're really an OKC build right now. Maybe they're more like a Pacers build if we're just taking this finals analogy.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm saying, yeah, the other guys, I don't know if they fit the OKC mantra, but we were talking about finding guys where, OKC has 5 of them just running around all over the place. We got one in Sion James, I think. That's his role. That's what he's going to do. Physical at the point of attack, be a dog. He knows what his role is. I'm supposed to hit threes, and I'm supposed to be a menace defensively. That's what he does. Yeah. So we got one of the OKC guys. The rim protection stuff, honestly, I don't know if Ryan Kalkbrenner fits the mold of anybody on the Pacers, anybody on OKC. I know people might point to iHeart, but iHeart's a little better laterally. Kalkbrenner's just a monster, man. Like, he measures 7'1" without shoes and weighs in at 260 pounds. So all of that, oh my God, Malawach is a monster discourse. It's the same for Kalkbrenner. In fact, Kalkbrenner is bigger in some areas, I think. Even with the athleticism that he brings and doesn't bring, depending on who you ask. He had the highest standing max vert outside of everybody but one center at the combine. And I value the standing vert more so than the all-out max vert from a center position, because you don't have time, right? You got to get out of the floor fast, baby. We need that right now. And so the fact that Kalkbrenner had a 29-inch standing vert, are you kidding me? Like, for a guy that's 7'1", if you're going to score on him mano a mano, you're going to have to go around him, or you're just going to have to go through him. You are not going to be able to put that shot over him unless you start from the elbow. And so the fact that I think he can anchor, I think he can close off angles in drop coverage. I think he's the best drop coverage center in this draft. Yeah, here I am ready to make a run to the NBA Finals. Look, man, it's okay to be excited. And I keep telling myself that. It's okay to be excited about what seems to be very serious moves that the Hornets are making. And it doesn't mean that they're going to make the postseason next year, but I think they're making the necessary steps to put themselves in a position to be on this positive trajectory. And I think this draft says a lot of that.
I don't put a lot of stock into the whole idea of like teams winning the draft, because it is so difficult to project how these players are going to, ultimately figure this whole thing out. So I think it's a ridiculous endeavor. I think, to me, the real winning of the draft is, did your organization do things that seem logical to what they have expressed is their plan, is their idea? And did they look at the roster and say, particularly in the back half of the first round and into the second round, did they look at their roster and say, hey, here are some opportunities for us to upgrade some positions with players that we value? And I think they did all of that. And it's great. It's good to know that because I think we spent a long time both in the Cho era and in the Kupchak era, you and I, looking at the rotation, looking at the roster, looking at what they needed the next season and saying, there are some obvious areas that they can upgrade. And then going through the draft and saying, Well, they didn't upgrade those. They didn't even bother. And then, well, maybe they'll do it in free agency. And then they didn't do it in free agency either. And then on and on down the line, and the same problems kept cropping up. So if nothing else, I don't know if Ryan Kalkbrenner is going to be, elevate his game to starting level, or if he'll even be a rotation player. I don't know if Kon Knueppel is going to be a starting two in this league. I don't know any of the answers to those questions. That's the whole fun of, we get to watch Summer League and start to figure some of that out. We get to watch the early parts of preseason and into the season and figure that stuff out, okay? But what I do know is, at least I think both of these drafts evidence that this front office understands what the problems are and are working to address it. And now the question is, how quickly do they want to address the one flaw that this team has, the biggest flaw, which is that they haven't been to the postseason in nearly 10 years. And that they cannot do in the draft. Over the long term they can, but they can't do it in the short term. The only way you can do that is in free agency and trades. And so that's coming up June 30th.
Well, and philosophy-wise, like, I was listening to Rob Mahoney, Zach Lowe go back and forth. Rob was discussing the idea of the younger champion starting to be a little more prevalent, where these older guys, these teams that decide to go after the veteran on a 2-year, $30 million deal, 15 a year, where it's like, okay, he's going to come in and he's going to play a lot of minutes. Those guys break down in the postseason now in a way where, if you have, especially trying to win on the margins too with older players that you're drafting, these guys that are younger are also a little more ready as freshmen. And so, you can't do it in the draft. You can't make a second round playoff appearance your 4th overall pick. Trust me, I would take it and I would run. If you could take that in the draft, I would do it. But it's also all building towards that goal. But the youth, they've got a lot of it. Now you have to find a nice mix. You can't just ignore veterans, but they got the youth part taken care of, seemingly taking or keeping all of these picks that they made.
So to me, there is a wrong way to do this. I mean, so we're praising the Hornets. Let's just look at the regular old Nets, who made 5 first-round picks, and they took like 3 guards
absolutely
that have high upside ball handling and playmaking and no shooting. They all talented players drafted around where you would figure they would draft, and then Danny Wolf, who I really liked, but none of it makes sense. And when you look at the roster, you're like, how does that team function well? And if your team's not functioning well, how do you develop players? And honestly, that was where the Hornets were for a long time. But I feel like they're looking at this roster and they're saying, how do we draft players that will both complement the players that we already have that we want to invest in, as you said in the open? Kon Knueppel, Liam McNeely, Sion James, Ryan Kalkbrenner, all players that will function to make LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller play better, and will be fine doing that. Ace Bailey wasn't going to be fine doing that. There were players in the bottom half of the draft that said, hey, that's not what I want. I don't want to help other people. I want to help me. I want to do me. And so you have to recognize that. And if you're a team without a star, then great, draft that player. But the Hornets drafted players that can make their players better now. And and I'll tell you what, if LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller play better, who's that good news for? It's good news for Kon Knueppel, because that means Kon Knueppel is going to have plenty of space to shoot.
Yep.
It's going to be good news for Ryan Kalkbrenner. It might be, because he's going to have plenty of shots to block, because there's not a lot of frontline defense still.
No.
But there's going to be opportunities for all of these guys to develop and get better together and get better sooner rather than later. And so that's all I'm saying, man. It's like they finally understand. We finally have a front office that understands that it takes both. It takes drafting players that are going to help your current stars and, drafting players that can actually contribute. It's a beautiful thing.
Okay, I do want to get to this in the second segment, and we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it, but, the guy that might be looking for his shot in a meaningful way, because you still need bucket getters, it's Tre Mann. And Jeff Peterson was asked about Tre Mann in media availability after the first round, which then went into the second round because, I don't know, he spoke about it at 12:45 a.m., 12:30 a.m. It was very late. But here's what Jeff Peterson, EVP of basketball operations, had to say. Bringing Tre back is a priority for us. I'm having conversations with Tre and his representation, and I don't see any reason why he's not back. Strong words, and we didn't know if Tre was going to be back. it would make sense based off the way that all the Hornets are working out together with Tre, the way that they're still utilizing him in some social media stuff. Here's Jeff Peterson telling you he's a priority. I'm having conversations every day. I don't see any reason why he's not back. So, by those comments, unless there's some kind of snag in the line, down the line, then it feels like he's going to be a Charlotte Hornet next year, which it presumably would also be on a smaller deal, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to have an impact player off the bench, and Tre Mann was due to be that before he was hurt. So if he's fully healthy, and they think that they might be able to get a little bit of a discount that could allow them to make a free agency move this season or next season, or another trade, then that's all the better if he's fully healthy. And I think, hopefully they've done enough investment in the training staff and in the medical team that I have some confidence that they can figure all of that out, at least to the best of their ability. And then I would support that move, because you have to have impact players, particularly offensively, off the bench. Grant Williams is going to help that, but it's not in the same way that, the last playoff team had Jeremy Lin, the play-in teams had Kelly Oubre. Like, you've got to have somebody coming off the bench that can pour it on when LaMelo Ball has to take a seat and Brandon Miller has to take a seat. Tre Mann can be that guy.
All right, rotation station coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
So we love the draft. How do all these pieces fit together with the current members of the roster? Next year, Summer League. Oh my God. I've never been more excited to talk about the Summer League roster than what we have with this year's Summer League roster. That's still to come. Final segment, LOH. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time?
Game time?
Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's a game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes that possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, by the way, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting baseball game that might be coming up. And so shout out to baseball season in full swing if you're jonesing for some sports out there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, Locked On NBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Are you bringing out the chart, Doug? Do you have the view for us? Yes. Look, we know each other well. I'm excited. Like, I'm giddy with excitement, getting to see the chart. I don't know what kind of names for these lineups that you have. They're often fun. They're often, okay, not as fun.
Well, I don't have the lineups
I won't ask you more questions.
It's very early in the process. I don't have all of this mapped out yet. I don't have any minutes up. I've got it up on the screen now.
Okay.
I've just got my projected starters, my projected reserves, my projected players, your third stringers. I got some big question marks.
Yeah.
And then I have Vasa Micic in Istanbul.
He's not
Welcome
playing
back,
a
Vasa.
lick, man. Yeah, welcome back.
Well, he signed a contract. I think
I
he
know.
signed a contract with Fenerbahce, which is in Istanbul, Turkey. So I think he's going to be hanging out overseas collecting his $8.1 million. So if you don't know.
By the way, well, real quickly, I know we talked with Keith Smith on Weston Walker yesterday, who's a cap guru. He talked about, hey, don't be surprised if the Hornets buy Vasa Micic out. If they do that, then that has some interesting cap ramifications where, they've got some space to work with. Not a lot, obviously, but just be on the lookout for a possible buyout there of Vasa Micic.
Okay, so I have Josh Green, shoulder surgery. He's in a little injured camp over here. And then on the starters, I've got LaMelo Ball. I've slotted in Kon Knueppel at the 2, Brandon Miller at the 3, Miles Bridges at the 4, Yusuf Nurkic starting at center. Wow, a center starting that can shoot the basketball. It didn't go.
No.
It wasn't stellar at the end of last season, but he can shoot the basketball. Then your reserves, Tre
He
Mann.
throws it in the air from the three-point line. Like, it is in the air. I've
Yes.
seen him throw basketballs in the air from the three-point line.
That's right. Same with Ryan Kalkbrenner. It steadily increased his three-point volume through college. I believe he landed at like somewhere in the 33 to 34% range. So, it's not Steph Curry out there, but it's somebody that poses a threat in a pick and pop or kick out situation. Tre Mann, restricted free agent. I have Liam McNeely in the reserves right now, but I would probably put him closer, in the swarm situation, maybe move Nick Smith Jr. back into that reserve slot.
What about Sion? I mean, look, I know we've talked about him a lot. He's older. I think he does something a lot of these other guys can't, including Nick Smith Jr. Just talking it out, would you put Sion there, or would you feel more comfortable with NSJ/Liam McNeely?
I'm gonna go with the veteran. Funny
Okay.
to call Nick Smith Jr. that. A lot of this stuff's going to be fought out in summer league and in preseason and training. I think we're going to have some training camp battles this season. And the other thing that complicates this is Josh Okogie, who's making $7.75 million,
Yep.
but it's non-guaranteed. And I think the Hornets may just have a couple of days to figure that out. So that could be interesting, whether they guarantee Josh Okogie's deal or not. And so if they do, then I think he's definitely part of the reserves. I mean, he was one of the most, just in terms of like plus minus points per possession, like all of that stuff. He was a king when he was healthy after the trade to the Hornets last season. Then Grant Williams, and then Ryan Kalkbrenner as your reserve center, which leaves like these questions around Moussa Diabate, also non-guaranteed money at $2.3 million, and then Tijan Salon, like how much has he developed? What is he ready to be if the Hornets are fully healthy? Is he really ready to slot in, and where? Would he like play 3 alongside Grant Williams at 4? Would he play 4 alongside Grant Williams in a small ball 5 lineup? But then where does that leave Kalkbrenner? There's some serious questions there now in the front court. Like there's always going to be confusion until we figure out what Tijan Salon is, right?
Yeah. I mean, I imagine people are watching this right now. They're looking at Tijan Salon in the uh-oh category. They're seeing us have Ryan Kalkbrenner in the reserve spot, Kon Knueppel in the starter spot, us have a conversation about the other second-round pick at 33 overall, having a conversation about him being in a reserve spot, and here we are not even mentioning Salon being in the second 5. Here he is in the third 5. I can't imagine people love that, having him be the 6th overall pick in last year's draft. We just don't know about Tijan Salon.
How are you surprised, though? I mean, everything that we talked
Nobody
about.
should be surprised, yeah.
No, I don't think so. Well, I think people will be because they see 6th overall selection rookie. But everything that we said in that draft was weak draft. They took a swing. We don't know where this guy plays, how he's going to develop. If you play him alongside Grant Williams and Kalkbrenner, can he hang defensively? Because he's going to be against some guys that can attack him. First step, you're by Tijan Salon, these some of these quicker threes. What does that look like? I don't know the answer to that question yet. And I think that's what, as interesting as it's going to be to watch Kon Knueppel do his thing in Summer League and Kalkbrenner and Liam McNeely, I'm like most interested to see where Tijan Salon is, because
Absolutely.
if he does figure it all out, it unlocks just so many dominoes in terms of guys you can move, guys you would want to acquire, and how it all breaks down. So I'm super excited to see what he's developed.
So it's a 19-win game, 19-win team last year. You have 4 rookies. Maybe it's not all that crazy to think that some of the rookies would take the place of guys on the roster that only won 19 games. And yet still, it is tough to figure out the rotation. So if Josh Green is back, and it's almost a cop-out, right, with him being on the injured category, because we do expect him to be back at the beginning of the season, but he is injured right now. If he's healthy, now we have to slide these guys back a little bit. I think Josh Green is going to start at the beginning of the season. He played a lot of minutes for this team last year. So if we put Josh in the starter lineup,
Sorry,
and then
Con, I believed in you. Walker didn't.
so then we put Kon in the reserve spot. That would push Nick Smith Jr. back to the uh-oh spot. But what happens there is if they move on from Okogie, which I think they will, as much as we'll always have our, little tiny Okogie stretch. I do think they eventually move on from Okogie. So now that brings, yeah, I know. Yeah, so I know I don't want you to go, honestly, but it probably just makes too much sense. Now we're having the discussion of the NSJ, Sion James stuff again. And, you can put NSJ back if you want. We can go Sion, whatever. Sion probably fits the mold a little bit more of what Okogie is, way more so than NSJ.
Also, who's the backup point guard? I mean, that's, I guess
still Tre. Yeah.
Tre Mann. Yeah.
KJ. What does this do for KJ who got minutes?
Yeah. He's hanging out. Well, he's still a free agent. I don't know that we know like the full details of what his.
Is he really? He's not under contract next year? Are you sure about that?
Double check that. I don't know.
Well, yeah, he was a second round pick. I'm pretty sure he's under contract.
We'll take a look. I saw him listed as a free agent in the last Hoops Hype rundown of this, but we'll double check his situation. But yeah, so that's interesting for KJ Simpson. Does he just get a few minutes by virtue of the fact you also have Damian Ball, who was on a 2-way contract in the season, making $600,000. So does he remain on a 2-way contract?
Yeah, he was on a 2-way. KJ was on a 2-way, so you're right. He not a multi-year deal, so 2-way contract. I just kind of had it in my head. He was second round pick without having done the due diligence, but you're right. So
but I think,
KJ?
So that goes to the thing with both Sion James and Kalkbrenner. Now they were high second round picks. Sometimes those guys get guaranteed money. Sometimes they don't. Mm-hmm. It depends on the financial situation of the team. So that could be interesting too. Do either of these guys go ahead and get deals? I could see Kalkbrenner just because of the hole that they have in the roster at backup center right now. Sion James might get put on a 2-way deal.
Well, and especially with Kalkbrenner being so different than Nurkic and Musa. Kalkbrenner is your biggest rim protector. Nurkic is the better passer out of all three of these centers. And Musa is the best. Let's just go bleep some stuff up and play with 110% motor all the time. Which, by the way, I still think Charles Lee should find minutes for Musa next year. I think, we a little bit disagree on him, even though I understand where you're coming from. Certainly, he does have his limitations because he's not 7 feet. But they're just always in the plus when he plays. He's always among, anytime you'd go see the Golden State Warriors with all those stars, like Steph Curry, KD, it was always Andre Iguodala that was the plus-minus leader every single time he played. Musa Diabate felt like that guy last year. He was always the plus-minus leader. It's like, We played winning basketball when Musa was on the court. Perhaps that's a decent thing to do. Clearly, there are some limitations, but I think we should find minutes for him. So, it's a tough decision.
If Musa can hang defensively if he can guard down a little bit, then it does become interesting because Mann can shoot, Knueppel can shoot, Grant Williams can shoot, Ryan Kalkbrenner has the ability to shoot. Now you've got some full reserve lineups where you can go 4 out, 1 in, and that allows you to play guys like Musa or play guys that have shooting limitations. This is why you draft players that can shoot 1 to 5, so you can have these discussions instead of constantly playing from behind.
Well, and right. So if we can just get enough from Nurkic and Kalkbrenner, then Diabate could be out there on the floor and not be so much of an offensive liability. And remember, man, they experimented with that when it was true tank season and there was nothing to play for in the standings. Remember, Charles Lee went to those double big lineups and really started to toy with Musa and Nurk, with Musa and Mark Williams out there. He started to play around with it a little bit. And again, it was Musa, It's funny because if you're a center and then you're playing with Musa and he's the one grabbing all the rebounds and trying his best to protect the rim, he exposes you. And it has to force these guys to play a lot harder, which perhaps is another thing to bring up. With all of these guys that they drafted, Doug, they're going to make this team better every single day in practice by just not allowing anybody to take a play off. And I think that stuff matters. Everything matters in practice with those 4 players, and I think that's why they're trying to continue to reset the culture.
You see what I just did here? You see what I
sure did?
You see this?
Explain to the people what you did for the only podcast audience.
For the only podcast audience, I just typed in Jarrett Allen, and then just going to go ahead and Command V him into the starting big. Things change. Things
do change.
Now you start talking about backdoor postseason appearance by the Charlotte Hornets. Free agency, June 30th. anything can happen, folks. Signing trades, they're a thing. You don't have to just sign guys into space, which the Hornets don't have. You've got flexibility. Let's go, Jeff Peterson.
And now that goes against everything we talked about with the shooting bigs because he can't shoot a lick, but he's very good at what he does in protecting the rim and
That's
just
why
being
you
a
got
defensive
Kalkbrenner.
source. That's right. That's why we got Kalkbrenner because he's going to unlock all of it. Anything else, Doug, on this glorious day where all the good vibes are here and any finishing thoughts you want to give to the people?
Now, look, if Charles Lee wants to build Boston Celtics South, the Hornets finally gave him some pieces. So and that's another thing. Just seeing a front office deliver tools that a coach wants to use. I just cannot, for the folks that are just joining Hornets land now, I cannot tell you how different that is than so many years of watching the front office draft players that I could just see the little vein in Steve Clifford's head pop when he learned who the Hornets had drafted.
Yeah,
it's like, if you want to draft those kinds of players, don't have that coach. Okay?
Right.
They're Jeff Peterson and Charles Lee, they're in the same room together. That, Jeff Peterson does not have to do exactly what Charles Lee wants him to do, but you at least see, like, I don't know that Liam McNeely is that guy, but you at least see, on the whole, they are doing things that feel like are in sync with what Charles Lee wants to build here in Charlotte as a coach. It's just great.
Yeah.
Alignment, I love it. Functional, competent Hornets.
By the way, Liam McNeely had a chance to talk with him yesterday on Wes and Walker. He joined us, and that's on our podcast feed if you want to go check it out. Matt Norlander had a report about Liam McNeely battling not only through the ankle sprain, which we all knew about and affected his shooting, but also was going through pneumonia last year.
Little Brandon Miller situation, little mono.
Yeah. So Matt Norlander tweeted it out and said that it was kind of hush hush. I asked Liam McNeely about it on the interview and I asked him, did you have pneumonia last year and have to play through that also? How did that affect your game? And he started laughing. I'm going to play through anything. I'm going to be a warrior out there. I'm going to be a competitor, which is hilarious because it was hush mouth. I don't think they wanted anybody to know about it in stores. And he answered the question like that. I was like, ooh, sorry, Liam. I don't mean to put you on the spot immediately with your first Charlotte Hornets interview. But it goes to show you, even he was playing through a whole bunch of stuff, and in all these circumstances that I think that hindered his efficiency from being all that great on the box score. So Liam is a dog, man. He talks trash too more than any of these guys. Talks all the trash, man. He's here for the smoke, so he's going to be a fun player. My last thing is,
I'm ready.
Doug. I had a comment when I said I feel like this Hornets draft kicks ass, and I'm scared to say that. I tweeted that out. Somebody responded to me and said, "Don't you feel like that every year?" And I responded and I said, "I definitely do not. No, we definitely do not feel that way every single year. In fact, I'm reminded when I don't feel like they kicked ass, and then they actually did make the right decision. So no, I don't feel like that they did.
I'm confused that I'm not confused.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
100.
yeah.
I put that, Doug. I put that out there. I said basically, not verbatim, but I had the same sentiment on Twitter when I put it out there. It's the same. Remember 2021, you and I did an episode when you weren't hosting in that window. You did come on with me and we talked a little bit about the 2021 draft class where everybody had them having won, drafting James Bouknight and trading back up to go get Kai Jones. You and I were like, okay. I don't, there were some other guys that we liked. Athleticism. They got more athletic. Let's sell the vision on how this could work because nobody knows. But this is the one where I feel like the Venn diagram of how it could work and how I feel, the Venn diagram is almost just a perfect circle. I feel very good about what they did, and I'm not even trying to sell you so hard on the vision. I just actively believe in it, and that's a weird space to be in. That'll do it. That'll do it for a happy Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, including YouTube. Check us out there. Subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff that your favorite YouTubers tell you to do. Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Go check out Locked On NBA. A lot of good stuff over there as well. Make Locked On NBA your second listen. Doug is on it. Matt Moore, Hayes as well. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. I'm going to try to get one of these second-round prospects. I'm going to bug Hornets PR, and I hopefully they're not too mad at me. But we got to capitalize on all the good feels. So 12 to 3, we'll see if we can get one of these guys on today. 92.7 FM. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. We'll be back with you on Monday.